What is the best way to teach and educate our children? Should we be the all-loving parents, my children can do no wrong? Or should we be firm, disciplined parents, my children can do wrong and I'm going to teach them a lesson? Let's look at this week's Torah portion for the answer. The portion of Va'era, the second portion in the book of Shemot, book of Exodus. Pharaoh was misbehaving. He was torturing the Jewish people. God says, we need to teach him a lesson. So how does God do that? First he appoints Moses and he says, Moses, go to Pharaoh and tell him, let my people go. Moses makes all kinds of excuses, and finally he says, I actually have a speech impediment. I can't do that. So God says, that's okay. I'll give you your brother Aaron. He'll go with you. He's a wonderful speaker. Now, a simple reading of this text seems to imply that Aaron was a supplement, backup plan to Moses. But if that's the case, then why does Moses have to go at all? Let just Aaron do the job. It seems therefore in a deeper reading that God deliberately wanted both Moses and Aaron to confront Pharaoh, teach him a lesson to let my people go. Why? Moses and Aaron were two very different people. Moses, we're taught, represents the attribute of emet, of truth. Aaron represents the attribute of chesed, loving kindness and peace. What's the difference between truth and loving kindness and peace? There's a beautiful midrashic teaching that says that when God wanted to create the world, he consulted with various spiritual agencies. So first he asked emet, the attribute of truth. Should I create the world? And truth said, absolutely not. Then he asked chesed, loving kindness and peace. Should I create the world? And chesed said, sure, create the world. Why the difference of attitude? Emet, truth, upholds the law, always doing right from wrong, insisting of a life of righteousness, piety, and integrity. Truth has no tolerance for making mistakes and getting things wrong. And so truth saw that people will be people. They're always going to make mistakes and sin. So therefore, creating the world will be a failed project. Don't create the world. Chesed, loving kindness and peace, although it's committed to the law, it's even more committed to the person, to understanding that humans are human. They will make mistakes. They'll have a lapse in judgment. And nonetheless, we need to welcome them, recognize that, respect them, and encourage them to do better in the future. So who's right? Should we live a life of emet or a life of chesed? Well, you may say that the fact that God chose to create the world means he ignored emet and he embraced chesed. So therefore, emet is not relevant. Nobody can live that life of truth, and chesed is the model we should choose for life. But that's not entirely correct. There's a fascinating formula in the Talmud of how to deal with our children, our students, our spouses, our employees. And it goes like this. The Talmud says everybody has two hands, a right hand and a left hand. The right hand should always be yamin mekarevet, the right hand that draws a person close and near with love. The left hand should be small doche, the left hand which is firm, disciplined, keeping a person at a distance, insisting on right from wrong. You have to have both, always. In what kind of balance? Is it 50-50? So the answer is also no. You'll know that for most people, the right hand is stronger than the left hand. Not for me, I'm a lefty. But in general, the model is that the right is stronger than the left. If the right hand is drawing someone near with peace and love, and the left hand is keeping somebody at a distance with being disciplinary and firm, the right hand has to be a little more than the left hand. Always a little more peace and acceptance than being firm and disciplined. That's the correct model. Something interesting about clothing. Nowadays, most men's clothing are buttoned up left over right. Most women's clothing are buttoned up right over left. Why the difference? So historians have all kinds of explanations. Perhaps men used to keep their sword, their weapons on the left side. So when they pulled their sword with their right hand, in order that it shouldn't get caught up in the shirt, in the jacket, they buttoned left over right. Women very often were dressed by their maidservants. And so it's easier for a right-handed maidservant to button up the woman if the garment is right over left. Perhaps that's the answer. But many spiritual people, and Hasidic Jews, for example, prefer to always button their garments, even for the men, right over left. My shirt, for example, was made in a store, so it's left over right. But my Shabbat garment, my Shabbat jacket, which I wear, is buttoned right from left. Why? Because we always want to drive this point home and surround ourselves and impress upon ourselves this formula that there's right and there's left in life. But at the same time, right needs to overwhelm the left. Always choose and prefer to be loving and welcoming a little more than being firm and upholding the letter of the law. there's a fascinating teaching that describes the difference between children and adults. You'll notice that by children, they may get into a fight over a toy for something and they're ripping at each other. And then the fight is over and 5 minutes later, they're playing so beautifully with each other. Adults, they get into a small disagreement and for the next 20 years, they don't talk to each other. Why the difference? And the answer is, children prefer to be happy over being right. And adults make the mistake of always wanting to be right over being happy. Sometimes we can be both, right and happy. But if there's a conflict and you need to choose, do you want to be right or do you want to be happy? Choose happiness over being right. Choose peace over truth. So in our relationships with our spouses, with our children, with our family, with our students, with our employees, with anybody, we have to always employ both. We want to ensure that we're educating that there's right and there's wrong and to choose a path of righteousness. But at the same time, we always want to be able to impress our love and acceptance for the other as well. That is the balance. A little more peace, a little more chesed over emes, over truth. That's why both Moses and Aaron go and confront Pharaoh